All right, I'm really pleased to have Brent Weaver on the show today. Brent has pitched over 1,000 web projects in his day, and he's helping other digital agency owners around the world grow their business and take back really their life, because we know agencies can be a bit challenging. So Brent Weaver is the founder of uGurus. He's created a boot camp for digital agencies that's been credited with nearly $9 million in real revenue that's earned by alumni. And Brent is joining me on the show today to talk about some of these methods of growth and how to really free yourself up from the day-to-day grind of running your business and kind of work more on the business. So he's going to talk about that and a whole lot more. Welcome to the show, Brent.
Good to be here, Kyle. Really appreciate you guys and everything that you're doing at Proposify, and just really excited to be on your show.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's an honor to have you. I'm a little jealous that your setup's a little bit more professional than mine, but whatever. You're doing your thing. Okay, so I really want to just take a step back because I know you and I have sort of a similar story in a way. I think actually you started way before I did. So I started my agency in around 2007, and that was around the point when you actually were in the process of turning yours around. So maybe just talk about when you started your agency originally and what kind of led up to this big change around 2007.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks that are listening to this can probably relate to this. At least I've found that when I talk to agency owners and I ask them, why they started their business or how their business formed, a lot of them are kind of accidental founders in a way, that they were web designers, web developers, marketers. They had some kind of skill in the digital space, and they started to do that for money. They started to, instead of going to get a real job, they were like, I'm going to freelance, or I'm just going to, do work for hire because I've got this skill. And, I just want to work on my own. I want the freedom that comes with that. And that's very much what my mindset was when I first started my business in 2000. I wanted to have a business, but I also could build websites. And somebody, and I was pretty young, I was like 18, so somebody said, hey, I'll pay you $500 to create a website that can have my inventory of chocolate cookies online. And that took me all of like 2 days, and I got paid $500 for it. And it was like, oh, I want to do that again.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of how my business started. So I think like a lot of people, we start businesses because we know how to deliver value to customers, and we like to get paid for it. We like the freedom or the idea of freedom that comes with that. But we didn't go to business school. I don't know, Kyle, did you go to business school?
Absolutely not. Actually, I went to like community college, took graphic design. So that was my background. And then I taught myself the web. And then I actually started my business because I thought my bosses were idiots. There were these like clowns running an agency. And I was just like, come on, I can do it better than them. They're making money off my time. I can do it. So exactly the same kind of idea. It's like, I'm good at this. Why don't I just like cut out the middleman and just start selling direct to clients?
And at some point for me, one client turned into 100 clients, and me and my business partner turned into a team and an office downtown with, two-tone paint and the flat panel TV screen and the leather chairs and the big conference room and all that kind of stuff. And we kind of learned how to run a business through our own experience, which is great. I think we learn the most when we are doing it, when we're actually out there executing. And I think a lot of entrepreneurship is learned through execution. But some of the biggest failures and mistakes are also learned through that experience. And sometimes those failures and mistakes will sink your business. They'll basically, turn your lights out. And so for me, that really happened in 2007. We were overextended. We really weren't. There were some things in the business that we were doing right. We were delivering great work. We had a great team. We had great customers, but we didn't know how to structure the value conversation. We didn't understand that not every single lead that comes to the door, not every single conversation that we have should lead to a deal. There are some people that you probably should just turn away. And we didn't have that mindset. We were just like kind of like a cookie monster, like, we want to work with this person, this person, this person. So we were, pursuing people that had $1,000 in their pocket just as heavily as we were pursuing people that had $50,000 in their pocket. And
I was just going to say that my problem is I went on too many coffees because people would email you and go, hey, I've got a potential project, want to grab a coffee? And then I would like go on them, and then after 2 hours, you're like, well, my morning's shot, and they've got $500, so I can't take them on.
I mean, I would drive 4 hours for that coffee meeting and then find out that they have $500, or they don't even have $500 because they don't even have a business, and all they want to do was, run a business idea by somebody. And you're like, oh, that's not me, right? I mean, I'm happy to have a famous entrepreneur or somebody that has a proven track record run a business idea behind me and get me involved in an early stage. Again, great questions for a qualification meeting. Is this your first business? Do you have financial backing? Do you have investors yet? What stage in the product market fit life cycle are you in, right? Like where are you at right now? Great questions for a 15-minute phone call. Really, really bad questions to go drive 3 or 4 hours to a coffee meeting for. And we were doing a lot of that.
Yeah.
I didn't also, so we had some issues on our marketing side. We had some issues on our sales side. I mean, I was demoing a lot. And we all have really cool technology and tools as digital agencies, but somebody would say that they were interested in having a website built or having us do some SEO. And I'd be like, oh, great, let me show you this really cool tool like WordPress or whatever. And I spent all my time really hyping up this tool, not diving into what that customer's core issues were. What was the thing that was going to move the needle for them? And so, we started having some problems. In 2007 is kind of the pivot year for us, because I can look back and say, well, we ended up having to get 2 emergency loans that year to stay afloat. And so when you start to go out and borrow money to keep the lights on, you start putting your social security number down, you start personally guarantoring large amounts of money.
I did that.
Yeah, it changed the game for us a little bit. We said, you know what, maybe we should actually go and try to find some mentors, find some people that could help us, because we're doing a lot right, but at the time we thought we were doing a lot wrong. And the truth was actually we were doing just a few things a little bit wrong. And that's something that we've really brought into the programs we teach now. Is it's not about rewriting how you do business. It's about making some small tweaks all along the way for what your strategy is, how you're trying to get customers, how you're interacting with those customers once you get the conversation started. How do you, pitch? How do you win? How do you deliver an amazing experience for that client? Most people that are doing good work are doing that 90% right. It's that 10%, those small tweaks that we can give them that help them to avoid the big pitfalls.
And so this is what your business is. So uGurus is helping digital agency owners make those strategic changes to their business so that they can not have to personally guarantee loans, and they can kind of take their life back. Because that's a big thing. Here's a mistake I made without sort of getting too off topic. Was one of the many mistakes that I made running an agency was that I wanted to be too involved in everything. So I wanted to lead the client projects and do the production work as much as I could, and I would just kind of hire people to do the stuff I didn't want to do. Instead, I think what I should have been doing is going out and building the business and working on the business, and in hiring better people than me to work on it. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, one of my favorite mistakes from early on was thinking like, oh, I'm going to go get interns to do my work for me because they're cheap or free. Right. And, that's such a rookie mistake, is hiring people that aren't as good as you, because it's a really comfortable thing to do. It's really comfortable to hire somebody that it's easy to boss around. It's a little bit harder to hire somebody who you might pay more than yourself. It's hard to hire somebody who is way better than you at whatever you're hiring them to do, to where they will actually be telling you what to do. But that's more the ninja thing to do, right? That's, when you start to get experience as an entrepreneur and realize that interns were a model. So any agency out there that's like hiring interns and thinks they're being unique and whatever, trying to get free or cheap labor, so we would hire these interns, and, they wouldn't show up, or it'd take us 6 months to make them operational. They wouldn't really add value to our projects. They'd just screw things up, and then we'd have to really coach and teach them. And look, that's good to have maybe a small part of your labor pool interns or whatever, so that you can train up a labor pool that could feed into your business. Yeah. But we tried to make that at some point like part of our model, like, oh, we're just going to get interns because they're cheap. Yeah. But it cost us a ton of money in the long run, versus like what you just alluded to, going and hiring like the best designer or the best developer, somebody whose work is going to attract more customers for you and take away all the BS from your plate, right? Yeah. Take away all of the how should I be doing wireframes or workflows, or how should I be doing mock-ups or creative briefs. There are people out there that are A players at that you should bring into your agency instead of trying to train up, green talent.
Yeah. I know one thing that you guys do really well is you kind of train agencies to win bigger projects worth more money, because I know that's something that a lot of small agencies kind of fall into, this trap of thinking that it's a volume business, and they go, well, if I can, I knew an agency locally that did this. They bragged about the fact that they worked on like 100,000 websites in 5 years or something with a small team. It's like, because they shat them out really quickly. The quality was horrible, and they probably made like still narrow margins because they didn't charge anything. But you guys are helping your clients, or who are agency owners, basically win bigger projects. What do you think is sort of the value of the strategy in that?
Well, I think one of the things it's helping an agency owner realize that, most of the agencies, and again, I don't know about your friend that did 100,000 or, 1,000 projects in a short amount of time, but most agencies that tell me they're running on a volume game actually aren't. They're just charging really cruddy rates for the work that they're doing, and they're not really volume plays, right? Volume plays, for the most part in our industry, are the big software providers that are bringing platforms to the marketplace. Shopify, right? Squarespace, Wix, GoDaddy, right? These are volume plays. These are people that can go out there and acquire. I was just talking to WP Engine the other day, and they're acquiring over 1,000 customers per week. Yeah. Right, that is a volume play. You can set volume prices when you're talking about that level of customer acquisition, and the fact that human beings aren't really responsible for most of the actual product that's being delivered. There's plenty of people that sign up for WP Engine or Squarespace or Wix and never ever talk to a human being, right?
Totally.
That's a volume play. Most of the time agencies tell me they're a volume play. It just means that they are really, really cheap, and they're not really bringing on that many customers, and they're barely staying afloat. Yeah. Most service businesses should never be volume, because what you're doing is you're not leveraging your greatest asset, which is that personalized customer service, that strategic thinking, that strategic work that you can do with a customer that really is your differentiator from somebody like Squarespace or Shopify or GoDaddy or whatever the DIY platforms are out there, who are truly the volume plays that you're competing against. It's very hard to bring in personalized strategy and service at the volume level. As you just said, they were doing 1,000+ website projects, and they weren't very good. They weren't really helping their customer achieve anything. Yeah. Those clients probably could have just gone over to Squarespace and had a similar solution built for them for probably the same end result.
Probably look better too.
Probably. Yeah. So I think that's the key thing, is like, for the average agency, especially the way that most agencies market, they're spending an incredible amount of time and money to get to that conversation with a customer. When I've mapped this out for most of our boot campers and actually shown them like how much time that they spend to get a customer, they're spending between $1,000 and $5,000 in their time and in hard costs, whether that's attending conferences, mostly their time, their opportunity cost at $150 an hour to go to meetups, to be participants in associations or conferences and those types of things. If you go to a conference and you pick up 5 new clients, but it took you a week of prep, a week at the conference, a week after the fact to get those 5 customers, those dollars and that time adds up. And once they see that, they realize that, they probably shouldn't be charging $500 for a project.
Right. And I bet so few, I know just through the course of conversation that typically agency owners are really notoriously bad at figuring out how much stuff like that costs. Like they don't, I find SaaS businesses are typically better at like knowing their churn, knowing their lifetime value, their acquisition cost. But like what you just said is few agency owners really go out there and think like, how much of my time was involved in bringing that customer on, and how much did that cost me, and what's their the value of the project and the lifetime value, and they just don't do the math. And a lot of it's just simply doing the math, right?
Well, because you're so excited, you just got a client and you finally are getting paid. You're like, I don't care what it took to get this guy. They're willing to pay me. So one of the things that I did back in 2007 was I just simply started tracking my time. And as a service business, as some, whether you're productized services or whatever you want to call that, whether you have packages or you're still trading time for money. If you're a services business, at the end of the day, you're trading time for money. Now, there's more optimum ways to trade time for money, but unless you literally have a turnkey software, you guys have a platform, a software where people can sign up and never talk to anybody, then you're not really a service business as so much. But even if you've got packages or whatever, if you're trading time for money, time is your business's most valuable asset. And so, I always compare it to like a jewelry store. Do you think there's a jewelry store in this country that does not have a meticulous count of their inventory? They know exactly how many gold watches they have. They know exactly how many diamond rings they have. And they're not like thinking to themselves like, well, I don't need to know that because, it's whatever. It'll all figure itself, which is how most agency owners view time. They don't want to track their time as the owner. They don't enforce their team to track their time. They get stuck on the complexities of, well, is this billable time or not billable time, or this project's fixed price, so why does it matter? So when I started tracking my time, what I found was that I was spending 20 hours a week interacting with existing customers in a training or a support mode that was unbillable time, because it was small amounts of time, 15 minutes here, 30 minutes there, 15 minutes, etc. And I thought to myself, well, that's not enough time to bill for. Why would I bill for that, right? And that's I was making a very transactional decision. Every time I did something for a customer, I thought to myself, was this worth billing or not?
Right.
And I just didn't track the time. I didn't account for it. What I found was I was spending 20 hours of my time, not only was it unbilled, but it was doing tasks that somebody else on my team could take over, and that could free me up to spend that 20 hours of time a week on higher value tasks, like you alluded to, being the champion of my business, going out there and evangelizing my agency within the community, doing the thing that nobody else on my team wanted to do, which was randomly go up to people at an event that I've never met before and shake their hand and talk to them about our business, right? Most developers and designers don't want to do that. They want to create great work. So that 20 hours a week was time that became very easy to delegate out to other team members or get rid of entirely or bill for, or free me up to do more higher value tasks in my business. And I think that's that freedom that we help people achieve, is that freedom of time, freedom of revenue. I went from doing support to winning $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 projects.
Yeah.
Much better move, right?
Oh yeah. And you've talked to before about just sort of getting your life back and the personal freedom side of it, where you're not, once you can kind of get those systems in place. I mean, I didn't take a vacation for the entire length of time that I ran an agency. Like I was terrified to take a week off, right? Because you're like, if shit hits the fan, or I'm just losing, like I'm counting myself as a billable asset, and I'm like, I need that billable time to generate revenue, right? It just changes so much once you're in a state where you're working on the business and you can take a vacation.
And I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I think it actually was Jason Cohen from WP Engine. Like, if you had a team member, somebody on your team that hadn't taken a vacation in like 5 years, like you would probably force that person to, you would be like, do not come into work tomorrow through the next 2 weeks, right? Like just leave and book their ticket. Like you'd be like, get out of here. You're starting to like freak people out. I think Jason said something like, no matter, you're beyond the help of a Snickers bar, right? Like we can't like and I think that you have to, as a business owner, treat yourself as in two really distinct seats. There is, there's Kyle, the business owner, right? You've got your owner's box hat on, and then there's Kyle, who sits in a seat or multiple seats probably within the business, right? And so if you're talking about you as an employee, you have to take time away to recharge the batteries. But then also, as the business owner, you should take time away to get that 30,000 foot view, to get away from the urgent and important, to get away from the drama, the team member stuff, because every great innovation I've ever brought to my business has always happened on a 2-week vacation. I mean, when I decided to, launch my first info product, when I decided to start, instead of being the general all-purpose agency, but actually start pursuing some markets intentionally, when we decided to exit the agency business, when I've decided to launch a mentor-driven course versus video courses, like all of these really good ideas usually come from getting a couple of weeks unplugged from the business and spending some time with yourself and really focusing on, who you are and what value you bring to the table, and also being able to look at the business from that 30,000-foot view without thinking about the fires that are coming through in your email box.
Yeah, it's kind of the shower for me. That's my place, but maybe I should be in the shower more or have like a little desk set up.
And so kind of talking a little bit about not getting the right prices for the work you do and tying that to freedom. One of our graduates and now mentors, Barbara Canero, she was charging $800 per website. She was doing the volume game. It takes a lot of $800 websites to support her 10-person team. She was working 60, 70 hours a week. And she had 150 emails in her inbox at any given day that were things that needed to be actioned. Yeah. She would leave the day feeling like she was completely underwater, right? Yeah. And she was, because she literally was 1 week away from going out of business at any time. If that flow of $800 projects ever stopped or even hit a speed bump, half her team might get let go.
I remember always dreading looking at my inbox because I felt like at some point it was always either a client saying they were pissed off about something, or a client saying they're leaving us, or somebody turning down like a proposal for a deal that I thought we had in the bag. And like I just dreaded looking at the inbox, And
that's how a lot of people feel, and they feel kind of chained to the inbox or whatever. But for her, it was just simply like a pricing problem. It was a mindset problem. But when she went from selling $800 projects to her average project now is $8,000, that changes a lot of the dynamics. She wasn't a week away from going out of business anymore. She could actually sit back and make some decisions. Yeah. She could actually start to get better people involved in the business, so she could confidently delegate stuff, so that instead of all those emails coming to her inbox, they were going to other really smart people's inboxes that could take care of those individual tasks. And now she leaves the day with 0 emails in her inbox.
Yeah.
She also works 30 hours a week versus 70.
Right.
So there's more to it than just pricing, but that's kind of the ultimate thing that we're helping people achieve.
So, and other than the mindset and getting people kind of on your team to delegate tasks to, like, some of it I think is fear of people they're like, oh man, if I told this lead or this client, I'm going to charge you $8,000, or in some cases $80,000 or $200,000, like, projects can be people don't realize, I don't think, that there are clients out there that will pay $1 million for a website. There may not be many of them, but they are there, and I think people are just afraid to ask, or they're afraid to put that pricing out there. Do you agree?
So mindset is, it is one of the major hurdles we go through with people, right? A lot of folks, and if I could, snap my fingers and change the world, a lot of people are very interested in the tactics. They're very interested in, give me the strategy, give me the tactics to get there. And I think the strategies and tactics do help to build confidence. But the mindset game is really where things are won or lost, right? Because you just said something. You just said there's not very many people buying $1 million websites. And I disagree with that. I think there is a lot of people buying $1 million websites. I think there are so many people buying $1 million websites that it would actually blow you away.
Yeah, I mean, I meant by comparison, but granted, it's a valid point. Yeah, there's not like 1 or 2 people. There's probably tons of them.
Right. There's a lot. I think. So as a service provider, you have to realize that you're not playing a volume game. So if you want to, for most people, when it comes to getting customers, if you're an agency and you got 20 customers this year, maybe 30 customers this year, that could be a bellwether year for you, right? Especially if you're talking about $1 million projects, obviously. But there's agencies that we've had on our program that we've worked with that are getting, multiple $1 million, multi-million-dollar projects every single year. And they're like, I'll give you an example. So one of our guest experts that came in, Nick Wynand over at Trademark Media in Austin, Texas, has done multiple $1 million projects with the University of Texas at Austin.
Wow.
How many universities are active in the United States? All right, there's a lot. They get multiple $1 million projects with just one university in one city. And university is just one type of organization that might need a large scale web implementation. So if that's how you want to build your company, like there is strategies to kind of get you there.
And people probably don't realize that some companies, and sometimes it's government organization or higher education or different types of companies, that's their budget. It's not like you're going up to somebody and asking for like $1 million out of their pocket, right? They're like, our organization gave us this budget, we need to spend it. And so if you go up there and you start acting like an amateur and being like, well, geez, I don't know, that's kind of a lot of money. Like like what you talk about with game, a lot of it's just game. You know, if you start acting like you're worth $1 million, then people will take you seriously.
And if you're interested in that, so a lot of people, like, in order to find the answer, you have to ask the question. So if your mindset is nobody pays more than $1,000 for a website, nobody pays more than $10,000 for a website, then you're not going to ask yourself a critical question of where do people hang out? Who are these people that buy $10,000 websites? Because you're so convinced that nobody does it.
Yeah. And
so you don't ask the question, right? So, the answer is different. So for a trademark, the answer of who buys $1 million websites for them is University of Texas at Austin. They had to ask themselves that question long enough to where they ultimately found that answer, where there was not only one business or one government or one school that did that, but there's actually a lot of people that spend millions and millions of dollars on their web infrastructure. We're a tiny little company, and between our website and our digital marketing, and like I looked at our agency expense last year, how much money we spent with digital agencies, as a business is doing just about a couple $1 million a year, and we're well into the six figures.
Yeah.
Well into the six figures we spent probably six figures on just a lead gen agency, plus six figures on a branding agency, plus six figures on a web development shop, right? And we're just a tiny little company. Like, we're a speck on the map when it comes to businesses. I was just at our EO retreat, entrepreneur organization, and in the Colorado chapter, there's something like the average business had $4.3 million a year in revenue. Like, there's so many companies out there that are spending heaps of money on web, digital marketing. I think that the mindset needs to be that there's as much opportunity out there as you need for your agency at all times.
Oh, totally. And, before we kind of go, I want to cover a topic because I think this plays into what we're talking about. So once you have that mindset of, okay, I can go out there and get a 10K project or a 100K project or whatever it is that you sort of set yourself, your audience, is there any kind of tips about how to approach that client, or how to approach, like you land a meeting with the CMO at the university, if that's who your client is? What are some kind of ways to think about handling that meeting with them?
So a few things. One is make sure you prepare for that meeting. I can't stress that enough. I think for many years, I just focused so much on getting the meeting and then I'll figure it out when I get there. I'm a high improvisation type of guy, but even just a little bit of homework goes a long way, so that as you're having that conversation with them, you're trying to kind of understand further and fill the gaps of where your research has not given you enough of the answers, and it will also inform the questions that you ask and help your understanding. So I use a simple rule there of spend at least the amount of time that the meeting is going to be preparing for that meeting. So if you're going in for an hour-long introductory meeting with a client, spend an hour doing some homework. Yeah. Some people that are high fact finder, high researchers will be like, oh, I spend 6 hours. But there's a lot of people that spend 0 minutes preparing for sales meetings. That's a mistake. Yeah. Every single one of your meetings you should spend a little bit of time preparing for that meeting. Just equal to that meeting is a good kind of rule of thumb.
And these are qualified leads. This isn't somebody that that wants that coffee and you don't know what they're like. These are people who you've already ascertained they have a budget, they've got an actual project, and now you're kind of like preparing for the actual meeting, right?
Well, I think that first interaction, even before you agree to a coffee, which I would recommend to probably not agree to unless you do like a 15-minute call, just like, hey, I've got a couple minutes, I'd love to just figure out what you're all about, right? It's you turn the table. It's not about you trying to pitch the client at this point. That 15-minute to 20-minute call is like you trying to qualify them. Yeah. And qualifying them is not qualifying the project. It's really qualifying who they are. Are they anywhere close to your ideal customer target, right? Are they in the market that you are currently serving or want to serve? Is this their first rodeo, right? Is this the first time they've ever built a website or a digital marketing campaign? Do they have an existing business? About how big is it? How many employees do they have? Why are they calling you now? Why this? Why now, right? I mean, those are some basic fundamental questions. And what you're looking for at this point is, am I getting a lot of kind of, green flags or red flags, right? Am I getting a lot of, oh, they have 300 employees, green flag? Oh, they're really unhappy with their current agency, green flag, right? They just want a proposal. Can I just email them a quote? They don't want to meet with me. Red flag, right? So these are kind of that qual call is like, you getting enough information to make the decision. Do I want to continue having conversations with this person? If your intuition is saying this is good, I'm getting more green stuff here, I'm not getting a whole lot of red flags, then, your second interaction with them is always to, schedule that discovery one conversation. That might be a longer conversation, an hour, maybe it's coffee, maybe it's a meeting at their office, maybe it's a Zoom chat over coffee, whatever. But I would even say that 15 minutes, if it comes out of the blue, right, no prep necessary, right, still have that qual call. But even that meeting, 15 minutes of homework can go a long way, because you could get some of those red flags very, very quickly, right? Maybe the email they're sending to you is from Gmail, and in their signature, there's nothing, right? And you look up on, their name on LinkedIn and you see some funky things, right? You could go into that conversation maybe with some better questions or better intel, so you're not doing 100% new information gathering at that point. That prep and research work becomes really, really important, though, the further you get into the process, where you get to kind of shine and start educating your customer. This would happen a lot on, like, when we get to talking about a client's competition, right? Oh, well, nobody in our market gets clients through SEO. Really? Have you heard of this company, this company, this company? Well, yeah, they're our number one competitors. Well, you know what? I was doing some analysis, and it looks like they're paying for traffic on Google for these top terms, and they've got landing pages and funnels set up for them, which is a large investment. I'm not saying that they're guaranteed getting leads, but they have probably spent $50,000 to $100,000 on these machines that are driving demand for their business. It would surprise me if they weren't getting leads from them. Oh, really? I didn't know our competitors were doing that. Okay, right? So that's kind of something like an example of where using that prep, using that research time can set you up to really wow your customer.
Do you know what I like about that approach is that it's very focused on the client and their problem and their company. And I think what sometimes agency owners get in the trap of is they think that it's a pitch meeting where they're supposed to go and talk about how awesome they are, and they've worked on these, name drop their clients or whatever it is they do. And it's like people respond so differently when you get right into their problem and talk about them, and then they automatically have a good association with you without you needing to brag, right?
There's that common and I like my simple rules, but you should be listening 80% of the time, talking 20% of the time. So, asking questions, and people a lot of times will email me like, oh, what questions do you ask in discovery? And I'm like, well, okay, they're just looking for the checklist. They're looking for the survey, and that's not really discovery, right? Discovery is using your research, using your knowledge as an expert, and really trying to go wide and go deep when appropriate, to figure out what their current worldview is, what their current workflow is, what their current process is. And when you're talking about websites, it can be anything from the sales and marketing of the organization. It could be from the operations and delivery. It could be from the finance and administration. There are tools that exist, many, many tools that exist that can help organizations at all of those different business functions. So if you get the opportunity to go in and talk to a business, maybe the reason they're coming to you is because they think they have a lead gen problem. But it turns out their sales team, every lead they get, they squander. Or maybe they're getting a lot of leads, but they're not the right leads. Or maybe they're not getting any leads. Maybe they have other issues in terms of how they're processing orders or how they're getting current customers to come back to them and repurchase. So discovery for me is really trying to map that out. I feel like I got my unofficial MBA in those 1,000 pitch meetings, where it was like, I got to tour factories. I got to talk to people about like walk me through your customer experience from end to end, and then I'll tell you where we think websites or web-based tools or platforms can help you the best.
Yeah, I think like what people need to remember is that they, the agency owner, if you're an expert in web design, you are the expert in that. So your client might think they have a problem here, but it's actually over here, and it's your job to kind of figure out what is their real problem. Sometimes it's not what they're asking for.
Exactly. And I think, so when I used to demo people on software, I was always like showing them how cool these content management systems and things like that were. And then, but I never asked like, who in your organization is going to, manage the website? And then what is the actual goal that you have for your website? So a lot of people were saying, well, we want our website to help us get new leads and customers. Who's going to manage your website? Our office administrator.
Right.
Okay. What experience does your office manager have in getting more leads and customers for any business?
Yeah.
Well, they have none. Okay. So like just some fundamental discovery stuff can help you start to educate the client on, well, look, if you guys have this goal over here, like, yeah, we could give you WordPress and your office manager could field leads, but that's not going to get you 300% more leads this year. Right. So it's we could put WordPress in place so we as your agency can launch content and funnels and do that kind of stuff faster for you. And that might save you some money, but the conversation shouldn't really be about WordPress. It should be about, your customer, your audience, what's valuable about you guys, what kind of content can you produce, where can we advertise, where can we drive traffic to, how do we convert interested people to buyers? Like that's a much more dynamic conversation that leads to $100,000 work, not $1,000 work.
Makes total sense. So, Brent, you've got way more knowledge and insight than you've even shared with us on the show. So, I want people who are watching this or listening to it, depending on what medium you're consuming this on, how do they go and find out more from you and learn more about uGurus and how they can get involved?
Sure. So, you can obviously check out our website, ugurus.com. Ton of free resources there. That's ugurus.com. Any of your listeners that have made it this far in the content, I'm happy to give you guys one of our free courses, or not one of our free courses, one of our paid courses for free. So our web design sales kit is usually $197 retail. If you just shoot me an email, Brent, B-R-E-N-T, at ugurus.com, I'm more than happy to hook you up with that course absolutely free and a 60-minute strategy call. So
that's incredible.
That's my way of starting discovery with you and seeing kind of what you're all about, what your business is all about. Plus, you'll get the course, and that'll actually walk you through step-by-step a 5-hour like HD course on my entire sales process. So if anything I said in this program so far was like, well, I want to know actually what he's talking about in more detail, that course will get you 80% of the way there.
That's an incredible value and generous of you to offer. So we're going to include links to that in the show notes so people can check that out. Thank you so much for being on the show, Brent.
Yeah, Kyle, man, this has been awesome. Anytime. Love what you guys are doing with your tool and how you guys are helping agency owners really with that sales process. I think you guys, not just the process, but speeding up some of those painful parts of getting to a sale. So I think the tools you guys are building are amazing. And just thanks again for having me on.
We're doing our best. And thank you again for being on. We should do it again in another year because I know you were on in 2015 on our podcast. So got to make a habit of it.
We will try to make it not 2 years, right? We'll maybe 12 months would be a better amount of time.
Definitely. All right. Thanks for listening, everyone, and take care.